Alright, this is new Excalibur number 9. This was a Christopher Clairvoyant book, but then he had a stroke, so we were free from his dreadful writing for a few months, as they had to scramble around and get a bunch of filling issues done. This one is by Jose Quesada's friend from college, and the cover is one of the biggest examples of an irrelevant poster cover. Neither of these characters are important in this issue. Captain Britain, he matters for about a page, and the other one doesn't even have a line of dialogue. We have a previously on page here that tells you all about Christopher Clairvoyant's rubbish, and none of it is necessary for this issue. It would have been a better choice to use this page to clue the audience in on the main character here, or the Weapon Cross series that they probably didn't read or have already forgotten about, because this issue is offering some resolution / a new status quo for a character who had gone missing after that book's cancellation. The incredibly uneven Weapon Cross series, it ended with a bunch of plot lines still up in the air, and this unfortunately quickly resolves them in the first few pages, and it's not really satisfying. The idea was that the original Weapon Cross program and the new Weapon Cross team, as well as Johnny Subliminal and Sinestro, they were all ganning to war with each other, and these first few pages are the most we see of that happening. So here they are in one big fight, and House of Murt happens, and all the muties involved, they lost their powers. I could maybe get into how this doesn't make sense, because there were combatants here who were not muties. All that this would cause is the muties to likely be killed by the other people. It wouldn't just immediately end the fight. But this isn't about Weapon Cross. It is about one of the characters who was left out in the rain by that series being cancelled, and that is Decibel. He had gone undercover to try and stop Weapon Cross, but it is not worth getting into all the nonsense that happened with him, because we get to this and he was depowered by House of Mur, and now he is in hospital suffering from his physical injuries that his mutie power caused. His jaw and his chest are just blown open. Very graphic and harrowing. They did an omnibus of Weapon Cross recently, and I was considering buying it, but then I found out that they only collected the first 4 pages of this issue rather than the whole thing, and that bothered me so much that I didn't want it anymore. Decibel, he is in hospital and he is receiving psychiatric help from this therapist who is obviously evil. Predictably, he is not actually trying to help Decibel and has ulterior motives. Then Warren Fallis's self-insert character shows up, but he has been written by someone other than Warren Fallis, so he is less annoying and less predatory, and he has come to try and, well, he's kind of just there to pretend to care about Decibel. He thinks when Decibel has recovered and is on the mend that he can join new Excalibur, which doesn't really make sense because Decibel has lost his muty powers. I don't know, maybe I'm thinking too badly on the Warren Fallis character. Maybe he does actually want to help Decibel get back on his feet. But then the therapist runs off and kidnaps Decibel because he was clearly a bad guy from the first word he said. You see, the therapist is loyal to Armageddon, and he has taken Decibel and fixed them up and remade them in Armageddon's image. I think it is a pretty interesting development. I didn't think Decibel has ever really been utilised that well since Generation Next ended. So doing this with him is doing more with him than most books I've done with him in years. The thing is, it turns out Decibel is a descendant of Armageddon. He is part of Armageddon's extended bloodline. And now that Armageddon is temporarily gone, the other people who share his blood, they want to make Decibel like his successor or something. I don't know. It is a storyline we never see after this issue, and it is as much as never mentioned again. The therapist, by the way, the therapist is the ancestor of Blinky from X-Cells and Generation Next as well. We had seen him in some of this writer's previous stories. To be honest, he isn't great, the writer. He's not the best, and he did some terrible stuff in Weapon Cross, but one of his strengths has always been he can do some good stuff with the bad guys. Major ones like Armageddon or Sinestro, or more minor ones like Scalpman. He was usually quite good at building them up or introducing new parts of mythology. Decibel, he refuses to get along with all this. He rejects this group. And then Armageddon shows up and lets Decibel leave freely, while saying that whether he admits it or not, Decibel is and always will be a part of all this. Oh, and then the book's actual main characters show up for a few pages. Decibel chews them out for being a bunch of self-interested wankers, and he mourns about how the Excellent Men are a bunch of twats who just kept throwing him into the line of fire when all he really wanted was to be normal. You could see this outburst as maybe some of Armageddon's influence taking over, all the anger and the bitterness. It might be a result of whatever they have done with them. It's honestly, sadly, never followed up on. We do see Decibel after this in a new Warriors series, and he is still modified to resemble Armageddon, but it is never once brought up or explored. He just covers his face with a scarf like he used to when he was on fire, and then he is returned to his hard setup when Age of Egg happens. It is sad. They really didn't explore or do anything with this. And it was a strong way to do something with Decibel for once. It wasn't really Armageddon who let him gan though. It was Armageddon's butler, Egyptian Alfred. And maybe Egyptian Alfred has his own plans that are independent of Armageddon's. We didn't know. It all gans nowhere. We finish with a tease of this greater story to follow about all this stuff with Armageddon and Armageddon's bloodline. A greater story that is never ever told. And that is the most frustrating thing about this issue. It is a pretty good issue. It is easily the best issue of new Excalibur. And I think it is a crying shame that the writer, or even anybody else, didn't pick up on this actually intriguing thread. I cannot fathom how Decibel just... it is never relevant again. Decibel had this enormous change and it doesn't ever matter. Even if you just went and did a retread of what happened with Wingman and you did it with Decibel, that would be fine really. It would be giving Decibel something to do for once, but they didn't. Comics like this are the hardest to assess because it is good, but it is in some way devalued by there being no continuation or follow-up. Interesting development, decent issue, well told, but it goes nowhere. I'll give it 7 thumbs up.